form an entity, whether it's a corporation or LLC, something like that, and then have percentage ownership in the company, with the prospectus of the company being that to buy abandoned vacant properties, preferably residential. Some people suggested we need to include commercial as well, but if it was starting off, I thought we'll start small and look at residential. But there wouldn't be any strings saying that it had to be property that was condemned for back taxes or anything, and maybe a purchase of property by somebody that's absentee owner that's just looking forward to get rid of it. And it's would be focused on properties that would be deemed uninhabitable. I don't think we would want to compete with people that might want to buy a fixer-upper and make it into a rental. Now, determining that kind of property, we'd probably want to work closely with city officials, because they well may have a list. I've talked to there is some list of some really bad properties that you guys may know about already, but there could be, you know, I think driving around town you could probably find 20 or 30 houses in a big hurry that would be suspicious that they could possibly be demolished and purchased. And somebody would have to do research on back taxes and who owns it and what kind of risks there are in demolishing the house. I didn't really realize how expensive that could be in talking today to Doug Tarr and Ron, that they can be pretty expensive to demolish these properties. But I'm just throwing out the idea out there, and have to get a lot of help if somebody really wanted to take the ball and run with it beyond this. A couple other points I just mentioned was that this organization could possibly apply for grants or donations even from non-investors. You know, it could be from the community grant programs or whatever, that, or you could apply for this kind of community betterment project. Even though there'd be private ownership, maybe you could still get some money kicked in there to non-owners that would, because this would be deemed most likely a loss kind of investment. I've been in those before, but maybe not intentionally at the beginning, but it'd be unlikely for an entity like this to you know, be a big money maker. But I'm impressed with the community who's kicked in, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars for improving the cemetery or the band shell and other things over the years. And I thought, might those same people be interested in losing $5,000 gradually on a thing that's going to clean up the town? And it may, maybe with some whiz-bang investors managing this thing, hopefully from a wide variety of backgrounds, maybe get some realtors and some lawyers represented, as well as bankers and people that are interested in maybe taking this on as a retirement project, you know, or something they could invest time to research the best kind of property to buy. Some consideration to be given, I would think, if you were buying one of these, to what's the potential for resale as well as what the cost would be. I would think that there's properties that, especially if they have multiple property owners around them, might be a little easier to resell than if you're landlocked with one person who can hold you up and never want to buy that kind of property. But that is really all. But one last thing is that we would try to keep it, hopefully the resale of any properties owned would be a public auction or a listing with a non-interested real estate agent, to make sure that, try to eliminate insider trading and that kind of stuff. But I have not really talked to anybody to sign up funds for this or anything, and just brainstorming. So I don't know if you have any questions or comments.
I'd just like to say, I think it's a fantastic idea from a standpoint of investing private funds to try to really get down to the nuts and bolts of cleaning up the community. I mean, we get a lot of complaints about the kind of properties you're talking about, and like you said, I don't know how feasible it is, but I think certainly appreciate the idea and want to.
Hopefully there'd be, I don't know if there'd be less red tape, you know, if you were doing this, you might have more rules to follow then what if somebody went in there and said, you know, we'll just buy it from you? For example, I doubt that the city can go in there and buy a house that let's say there's some lady in a nursing home somewhere and the house has been sitting empty for 10 years, to contact the owners and say, would you sell us that house for $5,000 so we can do something with it? And they may say yes. I doubt that you guys would probably be able to do that kind of stuff. But this group might be able to do something. Any other questions? I did find some stuff on the internet about how to decide what kind of things to demolish and that kind of stuff, and things you need to be interested or to know about. But I have a feeling that the city probably already has some expertise in that area, so a lot more than what I have already at this point in time. But I'll go ahead and just pass it around as I leave some copies of my general ideas. So thank you.
I got a question of the other camp. As far as your limitations, if I'm recalling correctly, 2 a year you can burn with shingles.
Right.
So if these properties that camp number 1 here is talking about have shingles removed and asbestos is checked, it opens the door for you to burn many more in the course of a year, and which is probably the least expensive way to demolish these properties.
Okay.
If there's nothing else on that topic, then can move on. Discussion of a citizen request for a 4-way stop sign at intersection of 140th and Olive. Doug, I think Doug or Ron, you guys received this request?
Yeah, we had, gentleman had stopped Doug and I out in the street and indicated that he had had an accident there and was wanting to request that the city consider putting in a 4-way stop at the corner of 140th Street and Olive Avenue. And so that's why it's on the agenda, and I'll maybe turn it over to Chief Schaefer if he wants to give any input on it.
Thank you, Ron. I guess why I'm here is I went basically, I had Mark go out and take pictures of the stop intersection that was out there. And as you can see, what I provided for you is there are 3 sets. There's only a picture of 1 set, but there are 3 sets of rumble strips. And then a stop ahead sign that is out there, and then the stop sign with the sign underneath that says cross traffic does not stop. I guess, you know, my feeling is, you know, with what took place there, you know, we don't know for sure whether he stopped or not, but we're assuming by what we got from both parties that he did stop, but evidently, for whatever reason, distracted, whatever, did not see the vehicle that was coming from the south. Vehicle from the south saw him coming and basically tried to slow down and stop before they collided. And I think that was probably a good deal, because I think it could have been a lot worse accident than what it was, because it did hit the car broadside. There were 4 children inside the vehicle, along with the 2 adults. I guess it's up to you in the county whether or not you'd want to make that a 4-way stop. But I guess where do we stop putting stop signs up? Because, you know, somebody pulls out onto Highway 3 after they stop and they get hit. Do we start putting stop signs on Highway 3 every place that something like that happens? So I guess I leave that up to you. But over the years, I wasn't able to come out with exact figures, but I know since I've been here, there have been other accidents at that intersection. But I don't think that it's an exorbitant amount where, you know, we need to go and have a knee-jerk reaction and go and put up a 4-way stop. Does anybody have any questions?
My recollection of the intersection is there are no structures that are blocking the view from any direction.
No. I mean, they're all sitting back far enough that,
It's a very open intersection. It's lit at night. And we used to, when I worked for Swan, we run up and down that road all the time. I don't think we ever had a problem.
Any other questions for Bob? Okay, thanks, Bob.
Next is a fire department request for water ball structure installation at Memorial Park. You wanna fill us in?
Well, we were talking the other night that we'd like to put up a permanent water ball site, and I just drove around the different parks, and it looked like Memorial Park would probably be best suited for that. Other than would be on grass, but if it worked out, we could eventually put either gravel in there at first or cement it later on, whatever, if everything worked out. So, and use it for training purposes, because you got to have the trucks running the hoses, and you got guys who are running the hoses. And it's a good deal. The trucks get run, and everything gets used, and it gives us something to do if we don't have nothing else to do. So, which is the case sometimes.
Ken, on the area you've got marked for the map, how big of an area is that? How many feet approximately?
I think the posts have to be like 110 feet apart, and then if we did put cement or something down, it'd probably be 10 or 15 feet wide, or something like that. And we've got one guy works for RAC and one for Corn Belt. They put the post in, and we wouldn't be any cost to the city to actually put it up. So.
A lot of communities use this as like a spectator sport for community events and things like that. Could you envision something like that? Maybe use it as a fundraiser, or potluck, or some kind of celebration type deal.
Right, and invite other towns and stuff, and they pay an entry fee, and so then you could actually do it sometime and have just the Hampton citizens do it, and have it be a donation to do it or whatever. Sure. And then you could be, if you're going to do that, we could be selling pop and hot dogs, stuff like that. So.
I think it's a neat idea, really. It's a park that doesn't get used a whole lot that I'm aware of. And
Right.
got some natural drainage there, and I don't know how much area you would have to park a bunch of fire trucks if you had a whole bunch of people, but work around that.
Yeah.
100 years ago, in the head dairy days, we used to have that right uptown. That was a lot of fun.
Good idea.
You saying that from personal memory?
I wondered if you were going to say something.
I left myself wide open for
I
it.
can hear the wheels turning.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a good idea. Any other input for Ken?
Well, as long as Kent's here, he's older than me, so I'm safe.
Well, I was just gonna say, we had some input from Jeff from Parks and Cemetery, and basically, it's, I think he brought up the fact that on grass, possibly damaging the grass if there's any long-term, but, Kent and we visited about that when we were out there, and you felt that it wouldn't really be used enough to where it would do permanent damage if they're out there for a day, they probably would get a little muddy, I'm assuming, with all the water, but, and then, of course, they'll be string trimming around and, or mowing around the two telephone poles.
Right.
But, yeah, might bring some more use to the park.
How high in the air is the wire suspended?
I think it's like 15 feet or something.
So it's not something the kids are gonna be able to crawl up on and get to.
I wouldn't think so.
They've got no place else to do anything like this.
The only other place I noticed would be at Progress Park, right between the tennis courts and the baseball diamond on the parking lot there. But then you're gonna have a post sitting right in the middle of the parking lot. Somebody will be backing into that all the time, I suppose.
I think this is a neat idea.
Are there any towns that have actually converted this type of a structure to a play type structure, a rope swing, that sort of thing? For use in times other than when you're using it.
Yeah, now they've got those, what do you call it, the
Zip
lines?
lines.
Zip lines, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ken.
Okay.
discussion on that, or would?
Okay with me.
I think so.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Ken.
Okay, thank you.
Unfinished business, we have discussion of city brush disposal. Rob?
Yeah, talked with Kevin Prowley. He had talked with Doug, and then he stopped in City Hall, and I visited with him. He's just not interested there for a few different reasons he cited, and so the city has to be looking at other options. We're, in the meantime, accumulating a pile of brush out there, and if we don't burn, we'll be looking at either hauling or hiring a crusher to come in and crush or chip it, which is something we haven't budgeted for. And the solid waste fund has a balance in it, although something that I'm going to be bringing up this summer to the council is possibly looking at increasing our landfill fees that we charge to the public on the water bill, because over the past few years, Franklin County has been increasing the assessment to the city on what we pay for landfill fee for maintenance of the old Hansel landfill. And so our fund balance has been going down because of that. And so we need to be looking at doing something. That's kind of a side issue to this. So just kind of open for discussion on options of what to do with the brush.
Have we researched how much a chipper, a suitable chipper would be worth, Ron?
Well, it depends on what you get.
Well,
Small chippers are, we have a small chipper, but
Yeah.
limited on what you can put through it.
Well, I was thinking a lot of people use that stuff for fill inside their flower beds and whatnot. We might be able to find a way, an option to get rid of that once we get it chipped.
The chipper that we have is old, and I think if we engaged that thing out there to start doing a regular, I don't think it would last long, but to buy a new one just depends on what size you get. These big tote grinders are $1 million. But
Well, how big a
if you get
brush are we talking? 6-inch limbs or?
18, up to 18 inches.
That's what we're taking in,
That's
up
what
to
we're
18
taking, up
inches.
to 18.
Okay. Well, it takes a big chipper.
Those are about $250,000.
Yeah.
Are we keeping the brush separate from the big logs? Because we've had this discussion earlier that we can burn, small twigs and stuff if it's kept separate from logs. Are we keeping these separate, or are we dumping it all together?
We're putting it all together at this point.
Why? Why
'Cause we're
are
not
we keeping
burning.
it separate?
Oh,
Because we're not burning.
Yeah, we're not burning it, so it's easier for the guys to dump and go than it is to try to sort it.
If we were going to burn, we
Yeah.
could separate.
Yeah, if we were gonna
Yeah,
burn it,
you're right.
we'd definitely start doing that, but that wasn't the game plan, so that's not what we did.
Yeah, I think I recall the Mason City DNR gentleman that was here with us was talking about smaller piles and not the large chunks of wood, and you could probably get away with it because you can burn a hot fire, as long as it's not moist material when it goes in the fire. But it wouldn't produce the smoke that we have difficulty with.
Yeah, and that's something that we could do if that's the direction the council wants to go. I mean, we certainly can do that.
The thing I would wonder is if we're considering that at all, if maybe we want to, when possible, not to cause a huge amount of work for our guys, but when possible, when the citizens are delivering out there, if they've got logs, put them in a separate spot. Ask them to unload them in a separate spot, down to go down to 6 inches or what. It makes more work for some of the guys out there to check that, but.
Yeah, we got the room to do that.
I think it's very advantageous for you to separate like that.
If you're gonna start burning it, yeah.
Well, we may be faced with nothing else.
Right. The company that grinds for us can grind trees, cost associated with that.
And it's unfortunate that we lost that option, but we're where we're at.
Any Doug, of working something out with the county?
Yeah, well, I brought it back up to Jason Gooder, and I've talked to Jay Waddingham. We've talked more than one time just on, hey guys, can we really start thinking of a place, nothing's just popping up right away. Even to buy something or something of that nature, if a parcel comes up somewhere close within a reasonable range, take a look. Kind of like what Kent Mullebeck was getting into. Once a city starts looking to buy something, all of a sudden the price goes up. We were thinking if something was on hand and available that the county already owns, nothing popped to mind just yet. So, but I think it's something we're all going to still be looking for as time goes on here, for sure.
Weren't there others interested at the time Kevin Brawley came on board? I thought that was. It seemed like.
Well, what people are interested in is the good stuff.
Well, sure.
And very rarely are we dumping good stuff.
Sure.
And that's the biggie. But there's people that, if they see a tree brought down, they like to take the solid stuff that'll make good firewood and things of that nature, but they don't want the brush that goes along with it or the smaller limbs and whatnot. I don't know that anybody's wanting a mass quantity. I think that was one thing that shook some folks, is just exactly how much we could actually produce when we do start trimming and hauling, and it can. You can see even this last week, we had a bunch of trees and stuff go down tomorrow. Staff's going to be working in the cemetery. All day street department's going down there to help clean up from what broke off last week, and there's going to be quite a few dump truck loads going out there. But yeah, we can separate the logs. That's not a hard thing. But no, we haven't done it yet, just because we weren't, going to do anything with it at this point in time. The logs aren't per se. It's not each tree you take down. You might take a tree down and the trunk will shatter into 4 or 5 different pieces, or you may get a solid trunk. It just all depends. So. But the one thing is, if we get big stuff, the company that does do our grinding now, they are equipped. He said it'd be the same price that we already pay if he needed to bring even this other piece of equipment on an excavator, and it's shears. And they'll use those shears to break up the bigger stuff to make sure that they can grind it. The actual grinding that we did do some last year, because we wanted to see how some of that worked, and he ground some of the trees, and the pile that we took, conservation wanted it, so we hauled that out for conservation, and they were able to get rid of it as mulch. So, but they're expensive. I mean, those big grinders are a lot of money.
Commercial haulers don't have an option to drop anything larger than 18.
At the
Right.
facility, right? Well, they can, but we
can.
yeah.
We can. We do.
We
have
do,
nowhere else to go with
yeah,
it.
we don't have any other option.
But only the city trees, is that true?
Right, yeah.
A private property owner who loses a tree, if it's larger than 18 inches, he's got to dispose of that also, correct?
Yeah, yeah, but we'll take up to 18 inches.
I think it would be a good move. We talked about it before, the potential, and realized we didn't want to do it. But I would agree, separating when we have at least making an effort to separate. Jim, you work out there. How big of a hassle would that be for the citizens that come by?
It's gonna be a big hassle, because right now, somebody can come in there with a tree, he may have a couple saw logs, he's got brush. It's gonna be tough to get these people to separate that out when they bring it out. They're gonna come out with mixed loads, that's gotta go there, that's gotta go here. Whoever's working there is gonna have to monitor that, along with taking in other traffic. It'll be tough, it can be done, but it'll be tough.
I was thinking more of our guys when they haul out.
Our guys will be easy.
Yeah.
Because we'll
Yes.
cut it, we can cut it at the site to kind of suit our needs a little bit and load it that way. Meaning, they can shave a tree and trim a tree up, take it, you know, it'll be a lot easier for us to separate it when we go to do it. It'll be harder for other folks.
Most property owners don't have the equipment to haul the big stuff.
No,
Do they?
most of them have, no,
I mean,
most of them have
18-inch stuff?
commercial haulers come in, once it gets over a 24-inch diameter, you don't see too many guys hauling their own.
Well, we wouldn't see those.
Or, right, and we don't see those
They're not
either, but yeah, once they get up there, you don't see too many people doing their own when they get pretty big.
I'd be in favor of directing our folks, if that's the way you guys felt, to make an effort to separate the wood from the branches.
So you want it just separated, but no burning as of yet until, or are you talking about burning?
Well, I just as soon exhaust all of our options with the county before we started burning anything.
We can try again, and, you know, it may even be, maybe we need to approach the,
Well, we just got through abandoning a whole bunch of
supervisors.
roads out there that we ain't got no use for.
There you go.
I hesitate to bring that up, but we do.
And we can visit with the county again.
yeah,
See what
definitely.
they report back.
I bug them all, you know, but I think, because I know they want a spot just as bad as we do. They had an issue a few years ago with something and burning, and, you know, they need a spot too, so.
Okay. Pursue that then. Thanks, Doug.
And just to be clarified though, so it's not a hassle for those guys, we're not expecting the public to do this unless they want to. We're talking our guys doing it.
Mhm.
And we can try to do some sort of an educational one, but like Jim knows how hard, you know, it'd be a learning curve, and maybe it's a learning curve. We put some information out there, and basically what's gonna happen is we put information out there, and half the people will follow that, and the other half will, you know, and then we'll just be reasonable and say, hey, well, you know, to do your best next time. And maybe it's just, because you get a lot of repeats, don't you, Jim? A lot of the same people utilize this facility constantly too, so. But I mean, we can sure try to educate the public a little bit more. But for my end, on our staff, that's easy to accomplish, so.
Good. Thanks, Doug. Next is Aquatic Center staffing update. Brad wasn't able to be here. Just communicated with Ron and Doug though.
Yeah, I asked Brad to provide something in writing if he was unable to be here, and he had a track meet that was rescheduled, it was held this evening, so he's not here. And so you have a copy of his request, basically, and he's proposing an increase, typical increase for lifeguards, which is if they return, if they were a lifeguard last year and they return, they get a 10-cent per hour increase, and that's the way it's been for a number of years here. He's proposing that for himself a 25-cent raise per hour, which would be about 2%. This afternoon I looked up, last year he was at $11 an hour, so he's requesting $11.25 per hour. He's found an assistant manager for the Aquatic Center. His name's Jeremy Peterson. He's proposing $9 an hour for that position. That is the same amount that we paid Katie Speak when she was the assistant manager 2 years ago. Their plan is that Bradley as the manager and the assistant manager would be working opposite shifts. 32, he's got 32 to 40 hours a week. Doug and I want to see that around 32 or less for each of them. So that's something that we're going to discuss with them and encourage strongly. So basically, Jeremy would shadow him for a week to get a knowledge of the facility and the staff, and then one of them would be there at all times. Swim team coaching, that has been in the past a per hour $9 per hour. And he's proposing that instead of a per hour, we do a flat rate salary of $400 for the coach and the assistant coach $300. He believes this will save money for the city. He explains that it's roughly a month long, practices Monday through Friday for about an hour, 5 hours a week, not including time spending coming up with workouts and preparing for upcoming meets. And they compete in 3 swim meets a year on average. Coach would spend 5 hours per meet day with travel time included. Time spent in all comes to around 50 plus hours for the summer. Depends on the weather. I don't know, I guess I wouldn't be against doing the flat rate. I'm hopeful that it would be less than we would end up paying per hour, but I guess I don't have any huge concerns about that. He proposed that last year, we just didn't take it much further. So that's basically the request that he's putting in for. Currently, the assistant is not officially hired because we're still getting some information regarding his application process. So, but these numbers are assuming that he would be hired. Any thoughts, comments, questions?
The first thing I would suggest is, I know the union negotiations are still ongoing, but I would suggest we wouldn't want to exceed anything for Bradley that the other city employees aren't getting. So it would just be a suggestion. But we don't know where that's going to end up. So that would be pending, I
Yep.
guess.
That's right.
So. Any other thoughts on that?
So are you suggesting we hold a decision off as far as an increase until after our negotiations are done?
I'm just putting that out there for a thought. I don't.
I agree with your thought process.
Yeah, and we can do that. I would say that, in fact, I agree with doing that, but as devil's advocate, these are part-time seasonal employees, so it's a different scenario, but I think...
In the general framework, it's a good idea.
That's right, yeah. And I think he would understand that, so.
Just fodder for discussion.
I'm just wondering if you wouldn't want to maybe consider putting the pool manager and assistant manager on salary. I mean, if this is okay for the swim team people and it saves the city money, you know you would be limiting it 32 hours a week then. And they've done a good job. I don't want to upset that cart, but I think that it's something that we may want to look at.
Yeah, we can look into that.
Any thoughts on that point? So, you want to have Ron present you with a number next workshop then?
I was just curious to how many hours there are.
Sure.
We don't
We can present some other options.
research, but yeah, I mean, Bradley's done a terrific job up there as far as I know, and everything seems to run. He's the first and only pool manager we've had since this is open. Maybe that's not reasonable for the amount of hours he's put in.
Well, we got 2 years of data to go on.
Uh-huh.
So it wouldn't be be tough to formulate some figures.
I know, I kind of gathered from him at the one meeting he was at, he does put in a lot of time, and that's why I was really in favor of seeing the assistant manager. It's gonna eliminate some of his times, and he's got other things he wants to do during the summer. We all do, he wants to be up there all the time, but just trying to see, maybe that's not reasonable to expect. And maybe it's not reasonable to expect that out of the swimming team coaches either. As a salary, I don't know. Just throwing it out there.
I mean, it's not an unreasonable thought, because like at the high school level, all coaches are paid that way. It's a salary.
A salary, okay.
And they put a lot of hours in at that level, I say from personal experience there, but it's not an unusual way to look at it.
Okay.
They get paid that salary whether they get ball games get canceled. If he's not working because of rain, or he's still getting the same salary.
It all works out to about $2.27.
I get where it's just being coach, right?
It's a lot of volunteers.
Yeah, we're only have you present us with some more options on that, then.
Yep.
We gotta wrap it up
Yep.
at that point then.
We have to, I
Yeah.
think.
Hey, Jim.
All right, Jim.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll be right against the wire then at that point, so.
Unless you think it's too late, I mean, to consider that, I don't know. Because you are gonna be a crunch time for getting people staffed.
Well, we'll just have to make a decision.
See, now Jim's getting paid double tonight. He's getting his salary.
Double dipping.
He only gets half time tonight here.
Wrap it up, you want to do that? Any other thoughts on the aquatic center staffing update? Okay. All right, next on the agenda is water plant dehumidifier replacement update. Doug, I'm assuming I'm turning to you for that one.
Sure. Basically where we're at is, we've done some investigating on a lot of different options for this. The unit we currently have has been there since 1997. It's about an $18,000 unit. We priced it recently with a local plumbing company, and they were at right around just shy of $25,000 to put the same type system back in. It seemed a little on the expensive side, but we budgeted on the air side like we typically would try to do. We looked at high E drive 195 type, commercial type dehumidifier. We looked at that, and then a staff member from the wastewater department who takes care of some water departments in some smaller communities brought up utilizing a residential style dehumidifier. There's a lot more that goes to it than just putting in a whole slug of these little residential. It would have took 4 to 6 to do the same job as 1 or 2 high E195s basically. Number one, I think the 1-year warranties. I talked to Lance Hugh and Hot locally, and yeah, they're cheaper. They're a couple $100, and the thing about it is with those is, number one, we don't have enough plug-ins for all of them. I talked to a local electrician. He said they need to be on GFCI circuits because it's in a water plant. They should have their own circuits. So we'd had to add some circuitry and different things in if we wanted to go that route. Then we had to figure out a way to plumb all of the basically the water that they absorb, the dehumidifiers. You got to get rid of it and plumb it to go somewhere. So then we'd have to 4 or 6 different drains, and we started looking at all that, and basically in talking with Terry, and I've talked around a little bit about what we found out, and I've had 2 engineers. That's what they spec out in their water plants now, are the high E195s. Those units are $3,200 roughly, a couple $100 for delivery to get them shipped to you. They have a 5-year warranty. I advise that we had one before, and there have been a couple problems with that one. So with that, then we contacted Charles City, Waverly, Okoboji, some places that had similar type size water plants as, you know, the water plants I visited, Latimer and Alexander, you know, those are a lot smaller than Hampton. Square footage wise, the structures, they produce not near the amount of water we produce on a daily basis, meaning our humidity levels are typically gonna be higher and in a bigger area. So with all that and talking to Terry, the thought process that we came up with is we'd like to purchase 2 of the high E195s. And the reason we say 2 is we're on the maximum of what one unit can potentially hold on probably the most humid day that we end up getting for cubic size room that we have. The reason for 2 is what we found with water, sometimes even with pumps and everything else that's mechanical, it's nice to have that redundancy, meaning if you had a couple of those, we can rotate them when the humidity's not so high, say in the months of like May, like right now what we get in September, you know, you're probably okay, we can run one, probably get away with it fine. It starts heating up June, July, and August. We have the opportunity, if we need to, we can run them both. If we get away from that, then if one will do it, that's fine, but what we can do is we can alternate them, you know, let one go for this week, maybe alternate the other one the next week. That way you're not putting all the wear and tear on just one. That typically works good for pumps, and we think it'll do a good job there, and it'll work out well for us.
Would you be able to buy these locally as well?
No, these aren't, unfortunately, they're not local. However, what I have been told is those from the company is anybody that works on appliances, so like Lance Uhlenhoff, he would be able, we could call Lance if a compressor went out, hey Lance, can you come and work on it? And he'd be able to do the work and do the work on it, and then, you know, do the warranty work through him, you know, to that company for reimbursement type thing. But it was a 5-year on those now, that we've asked if they've done anything different since, you know, in the last, you know, 10 plus years. And they put some new coatings on different things now internally that help it resist the chlorine, basically.
Are these used in a commercial type setting?
Yeah, these are commercial type applications. The other downside, you know, if we're had all these little residential ones, the downside is in a year's time we could potentially, it dies, you know. And yeah, maybe it's only a couple $100 to replace it, but that's not thinking very environmentally sound either, because now we're just adding another, basically they're disposable, and you know, and that's the same thing Trevor kind of described to me. Those are just kind of disposable little units, you know, and they're throwaway. So with all the communications we had with other water plants and other water plant employees, I got a few emails back from them, and everybody so far has been happy with them. I did find Okoboji had 2 extra ones that were brand new, haven't been used. They actually purchased too many on their project, and they wanted $2,500 for theirs. I don't know that they still have those this week yet, but the only downside is we don't get the warranty with that. And you know, I think I'd rather have something that has that 5 years of warranty. If we're considering that, I think that has some value.
And what we go with would be paid for out of next year's budget, which would be after July 1st. So
right.
If you ordered them and we got them in June, we could pay for them in July.
Right. Yep. I've typically been able to work with that with most vendors.
Now, you said we had problems with the plug-ins and drains.
Right.
Do we have enough, or are we set up okay that we don't have to do any extra work for this then?
For one, we might have to put in one GFI or assure that we have a GFI circuit on the one plug-in where we would plug this unit into. So and that would be cheaper than adding multiples.
What is the cost of that insulation? I mean, you're talking very generally as far as the cost of insulation for the wiring, for the GFIs, for the drain. And it sounds like you said 4 to 6 versus
right.
2.
Right.
I mean,
or 1.
If you're comparing one to 4, You got, what's the difference in cost there? And another question I have from the get-go is our unit, our 1997 unit toast?
From my understanding, and that's what local plumber said, we can always get a second opinion, but it's my understanding that it's pretty shot internal. So there's been a lot of corrosion, and it served their purpose very well over the years, actually. But they've had a few glitches here and there, but I can always get a second opinion from a second plumber.
Because the picture I'm looking at there is if it's not toast, if it's not history, and it will continue to work, but maybe we're gonna have some issues, is maybe we try as a backup some of these smaller units. One, maybe, and I don't know.
I don't think one unit, you know, it really gets like a rainforest in there on a hot, humid day, and all that condensation and everything, all that water and all the backwash water, the humidity level is extremely high. And when you have that, the problem you have when you have all that humidity is chlorine and everything else. It just eats everything up. It eats the doors up. Anything that's metal in that gets ate up. It's not good for the paint. And to paint that entire place, I just really don't think one of those little tiny units is gonna be much good at all.
I'm just thinking as a backup,
Well, as a backup.
if that's working, if it needs some.
Oh, yeah, I don't think it's,
I wasn't
yeah.
even suggesting one would do it.
Oh, yeah, no, just I think the big one isn't working at this point, just not, period, isn't working, so. But I can sure check and talk to Ron a little bit more. Ron Murphy's the first one I talked to. I can bring Hampton Heating in. I wouldn't even be against maybe bringing in, maybe Lance, you won't have to talk about his perspective and coming in with refrigeration units and stuff, because they're really similar. They have compressors in them, so.
One question I was gonna ask is, you said you recommended 2 of the industrial, why not one? How about a combination, 1 of the industrial and then get 1 of the residentials for the time where, like in the summer, when you need that little bit more, because you said the industrial was almost pretty much
Yeah, it's
take
right
care
at
of it
max
except
capacity.
for that close time, but then get a residential one to help
Sure.
take care of that other. I mean, I don't know if you would do a combination of that
Sure.
or not as a consideration.
We could sure try.
And I don't know how much that would be difference in price then.
And really, I think I could put 2, you can put 2 on one outlet. The outlets, if you're gonna have someone come in and install them, that's $800 to $1,000 to put it on its own circuit and have its own plug-in and everything. So that was what Mike Harper at A&M Electric quoted me, basically. Good idea.
Like you paid the big bucks for it.
That's right.
And coming late, sorry about that.
We can do a million things, so that's just what, we recommend, but we can always do whatever.
But wouldn't maybe getting the 2, I'm just trying to think this through, getting the 2 industrial ones and alternating them, maybe save us money in the long run, because it would save the wear and tear on those.
And they're more efficient. The bigger ones are more, the commercial grade are a lot more efficient in operation.
What was the problem that we had with the one that we had? Other places have had problems with those 2. What was the problem?
With the one, I don't know of anybody that has one like we have, the big one.
No, the high drive that we had in the past, the 195 that we had problems with.
I don't know, that was, Terry said that was clear back in '97, so I'd probably have to ask someone that was around back then, but usually the compressors are what go in them. That's what the internal components of it, basically, those are what kind of go bad in them, and they get to a point where they get corroded. They're in a really, you hate to say toxic, but they're in a harsh environment out there. You got a ton of chlorine in the air. Like I said, anything metal. That's why we had to move the computers out of the plant and move them into a different area. Just because the return air on those type structures and stuff just doesn't keep up well enough to keep things from being under the harsh environment, basically. You're trying to just keep it, you're not trying to keep it bone dry in there, you're just trying to keep all the humidity off of everything.
I think you've talked to engineers about this, and I guess I'm siding with Val, that if you had 2 commercial units and you ran them half service, I think that the time span would be a lot longer too. And I like the fact of the 5-year warranty.
Yep,
I think I'd be a little bit more inclined to listen to the engineers and
Yeah,
maybe spend the extra money and hopefully I get a better result out of it. It's not taken away from any other suggestions, but I just think that
and I don't remember.
I'd want as much as I could.
I don't remember if it was Belmont or someone had an open filter system like we used to have at the old aquatic center, where the filter was through it was just really open and really wet. And but that's the way they filter their drinking water. And they have 10 of them, the high E 195, to keep up with all that humidity that they're running through there. The good part for us is our filters are closed, but we have a lot of backwashing that goes through, and we're backwashing every other day. So obviously when it's hot and humid out, it can be pretty wet and damp in there.
I would think with 2 commercial dehumidifiers, the stress on each one is half, basically. And I think, yeah, I'd like to buy the smaller unit, but if we throw them away that consistently, it's not really gonna gain anything.
One question I had, how many, you said Trev is using them in Ladner, how often does he throw them away?
Oh, he said he may get one that lasts a year, he may get one that lasts a few years. It's a roll of the dice.
And they're a couple $100.
Yep, and those are a couple $100, yep.
I had one at home, I paid $250 for it, it lasted me a year and a half in my basement, it went that wet.
Yeah, I paid similar to that, and I just replaced mine.
They're not cheap.
Lance was really good to talk to about, the residential types and stuff, and he was a wealth of knowledge on that too. I mean, basically what you got is you got 2 engineers, and you have, we have many other water department operators from other towns that are, all basically utilizing these high E 195s. Not saying we can't think outside the box or try to do something different, because we sure can.
Well, what's the council want to do?
What do you think?
I like the idea of the 2 industrial ones and alternate,
So do
and
I.
with the 5-year warranty.
I'd go with that. Anything commercial's gonna be better built than any residential ones. And I appreciate the fact that $7,000 for 2 of them is a whole lot less than $25,000.
Well, I agree.
I'd try that heartily.
Yeah. I'm praying, and hopefully we get 2.
Staff has researched it. I mean, we gotta trust our staff too. I mean, this is what you guys recommend or suggest. I think that
Yeah,
have to listen to the staff.
I like the communication. A lot of people got involved in it, and it's good to think outside the box sometimes. It just sometimes isn't always feasible, or there's a downside to everything. So we just have to weigh it all out.
I would say see if what the soonest is we could get them and yet still be billed pay after July 1st. If you could.
Okay.
I'd stand with Jim. I think one commercial, for funds is going to be adequate and kind of back up as a residential, but I think that makes it 4 to 2.
Yeah. So, we'll go with the commercial route, see how we come up.
Or can we vote in a meeting like this? We have to vote if it's
Consensus.
It's a consensus.
No official action.
You can vote on payment, Dick. Thanks, Doug.
So if I sign for it, am I stuck with it?
Trying to do it before Thursday.
Glad you brought that up.
Lastly, we have the 2080 intergovernmental agreement for dispatching update. What I have for you is that we have finally attained an agreement that you guys can vote on this coming Thursday if you so choose. It's on the agenda. As I mentioned, it's been well over a year in the making. I think it's after a year, I can tell you it is the best agreement that we can come up with between the city and the county. Dispatchers have forwarded you guys some comments that they have had. I don't know if they want to make any further comments here tonight or not. But what I can tell you is that the negotiating position that we started out at was exactly what you're asking for now. I just think that if the situation gets reset or we go backwards, it's probably only going to get worse for personnel from the county standpoint, because the county, they're not going to give any more on the benefits and some of the things you mentioned in your letter. You can certainly ask them if they would be willing to, but I can tell you based on the meetings that we've had, and unfortunately they were all closed meetings. We asked for them all to be open, but they were all closed meetings. Going back to the combined meetings that we had last year, we started out from a position saying, basically, we're going to move this operation from this building to that building, and we'd like everything to stay the same. Well, that's when things started to get muddy, and I think that we have an agreement here that both parties can work with, I think it's something the council should approve. Hopefully, I think the supervisors will approve it. I think it will be good for both entities moving forward. You guys have had a chance to review it. Are there any questions or discussion items that you have on the agreement or anything pertaining to it? Steve?
Well, I just want to say that I feel personally, and this is my personal opinion, it's kind of like if Mr. Donnelly decided to sell the radio station tomorrow, it's not an uncommon practice that you have to reapply for your job.
Right.
It is an uncommon practice to make you lose benefits in the process. And that's all I'm going to say on it.
Okay. Well, what I say to that is, that's the position we started off at.
And that's the position, in my opinion, that's the position we should end.
Well,
because these folks have the combined experience, they've been paid a wage, they have been given the benefits, and you are holding them captive by having them go to work for somebody else, okay, and lose benefits. That's just not right. These people have done nothing but provide good service. That's just my feeling.
I agree.
And I know what Jerry, and I understand from their position.
Right. The point of the matter is, if the 2080 is going to move forward, this is the deal as it is. Now, if you guys vote not to do it, and that's your basis for not going forward, then that's fine. We can go back at it. But my feeling is that the county is not going. They're not going to give. And so, I guess what I'm saying is, if that's the basis of the vote, if that's what it hinges on, I would suggest that you're probably not going to see this happen.
Okay, then we're talking about an operation that gave themselves 2% raises at their highest positions, and yet they want to jeopardize somebody else. That's my point.
Anything else?
The seniority aspect of this, run by me if you would, what they're talking about. I'm assuming you're losing seniority. What's that issue?
Well, what they're talking about is they would be starting as day one employees with the county. And that's where the city stepped up to say, we will cover vacation, all the vacation that they've accrued. We'll either pay it out in a cash settlement, their last day of work, or they can carry it over with them, and the county has agreed to honor their time. The city would have to reimburse the county for the payment of them to take that vacation, because they wouldn't have any from a county standpoint as a county employee. We also cover half of their sick time.
We don't cover any other sick time for anybody else that retires, that's do we?
No, we don't.
So you think there was no room for compromise at all as far as some of this accrued vacation time for lengthy service?
The supervisor's
Service?
The supervisor's position was 0. You know, their position was that the dispatchers, if they are to be rehired by the Emergency Management Commission, that they would be 0. That they would essentially have a job and nothing more.
So what you're saying is there's not even there's a possibility that they may not get rehired?
Yeah, there would be a very remote possibility of that.
Okay, when we developed this other commission, that was, they were the ones to be the main overseers of the entire operation. And funding would be derived from both us and the county, correct?
That's right.
So, what's the problem? We pay half, they pay half, or whatever, they decide to split?
It's pretty good. The county would pay 60.
Mm-hmm.
City pays 40. That's for the first 2 years.
Okay,
After that, it's the Emergency Management Commission's baby,
and where do they get their money? From us anyway, right?
from county taxpayers.
Correct.
Right. The hiring of the dispatchers goes through the Emergency Management Commission, and we have included wording in the agreement that states that all of the current dispatchers receive full preference unless there's some cause given. Now, I will tell you that there was an attempt to have that language stricken. Don't know by who, don't know why. Was never given an answer. But we were successful in maintaining that wording as a protection for the current dispatchers. I have every confidence and every reason to believe that all of our dispatchers who want their jobs will have their jobs. As part of the Emergency Management Commission, who attends these meetings and who will be part of that hiring process, I have no reason to believe otherwise. I think we've been as strong as we can be. There wasn't going to be an agreement made from the county's position that just said these employees will be
hired.
They had a lot of legal concern for that.
I'd be interested to hear that, but that's all right.
I have a question for you. So, I guess the dispatchers we have, they go to work for the county, basically none of their experience working for the city is being taken into account if they're starting from day one.
That's what I assume.
And I think that's wrong. Well, example, I had a tennis meet tonight, and I coached at Iowa Falls for 20 years. When I ended up, I applied for the job and got it at Hampton Dumont. They took into account my 20 years of coaching experience for my pay scale.
Well, they should.
Which is public knowledge. But, but that's nice. And I'm thinking, why isn't the county doing the same thing? We have experienced people here. To me, they should go into it with that same amount of experience. Now, how that translates exactly into money and time off and that, they'd have to figure that out. But I think that they should go into that position without losing any seniority.
They were dispatching county vehicles at the same time they were dispatching ours.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, in fact, to me, that even though the city paid, the county also paid into that too. So they're employed by both.
Right.
And I think it's just wrong what you've done here.
As an accounting principle, when they quit one job to another, that's all it's for, is to show a date certain when they go to work for a new employer. That's what it's for. And I can think of no area where they lost money by going to a different trading hand until we come up with this tonight. I just don't agree with it.
Well, there's two areas that that I think that their experience is being factored in. First of all, is that they will be hired and have the position. And secondly, at the same wage that they're getting now. The thing that they'll be starting over with is they'll have to start as if any new county employee would with the benefit schedule, the vacation accrual, the sick leave accrual, with the exception that the city is offering to transfer half of their sick leave that they've accumulated over. So they will have that, and they can transfer vacation pay. If they don't want to take it as a check, they could take it as time and then use that time off, and then the city would reimburse the county. So it's not the most ideal for the employee, but it's what we were able to negotiate as a compromise when the counties didn't want to, just wanted them to start from day one with vacation and sick leave.
So their new salary is the same as what they're getting now, so that does compensate them for their experience in that regard.
Yeah, that's the intent of the parties, was that they would be making the same pay, earning the same pay as they are currently.
So why wouldn't the county agree to, like, the regular, all the other benefits and like vacation and sick pay? Why wouldn't they
It has
agree
to.
with that?
I don't agree with their reasoning. Their reasoning is that it wouldn't be fair to the employees of the county who have been with the county for other years, because they've had county employees who have transferred from department to department within the county's employ, who have when they transferred, they started over as year one employees.
Do they have to be employees of the county? Could it be under the commission or whatever?
That's what
They would be.
we talked about, was them to be.
So they're just totally separate?
Right.
So what's the difference then? I mean, if that were the case, then it wouldn't,
They-
they wouldn't
they-
have to worry about being.
They're
fair with the county.
they're employees of the Emergency Management Commission,
Mhm.
which is essentially a county function.
It's under the umbrella of the county, because the
But
county
it's not
supervisors approve their
exactly
budget.
under the county though, right? So it's sort of a separate group, so it's not exactly the same, so.
It is, but like the emergency management director, any other employees gets county benefits, because it's under the budgeting process of the county. They submit their budget with their expenditures to the county supervisors, and they include that in the county budget. That's
I guess I'm wondering too, were these sessions closed so that they could avoid this kind of discussion? I mean, I'm just asking because to me, there's a lot of good points being brought up here. And I've said before, I think it was during when we were talking about the airport situation with the employee there, dedication and loyalty mean a lot to me. And to me, it's a slap in the face. Okay, we're going to pay you the same. You've worked with us before. We didn't see a problem with you then. If there was a problem with them, the dispatchers then, okay, then we should have fired them or replaced them, whatever you want to do. If there wasn't a problem with them then, we're going to give you the same pay and stuff, but we're going to take away all your benefits. This is a unique situation to me. I just don't agree.
There were, was it 3 closed meetings? There was 3 or 4 closed meetings. We asked for every single one of those to be open.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was very frustrating to have those closed. We had very similar conversations as to what's going on right now. And I've had conversations with each of the dispatchers that's sitting here tonight, and I've hopefully explained to them that I have fought like the Dickens to make sure that they have every protection. The last joint meeting that we had and all throughout this process, the direction from this council has been to pursue an agreement with the county. What I'm giving you is the best we could come up with.
Okay.
Now, I just want to make sure that you guys are clear that I have fought for our employees.
I can vouch for that.
And I've gotten very angry at times because specifically over the fact when they tried to take out the clause that protected these employees from being rehired if they chose to seek employment. I felt that was very underhanded. I don't know where it come from to this day. I can speculate, but I prefer not to do that. And I said the exact same thing. You know, if there's reason not to hire, then that's fine. We'll work through that. But we have to give these dispatchers, these employees, their due. That's why we fought for the current pay. We fought to get them to agree to let us pay for their vacation. I mean, that's what we're talking about. I mean, that part wasn't going to cost the county a dime, and they didn't want to go along with that.
Why?
Because it was unfair to the other county employees, is what we were told.
Did we compare their benefits package to what these folks are getting? What's the difference?
There's some minor differences. I think dental is one of them.
Accrual differences?
Yeah, accrual differences, yeah.
And disability insurance. City has disability insurance. County does not have disability insurance, and they're
they
not.
have to buy their own. They can buy it through the county.
Well, the city provides it here,
Okay.
and they indicated they're not going to just provide disability insurance for the dispatchers when the remaining county employees don't.
I don't know. Pretty tough way to run a railroad, I'll tell you that. Perhaps I'll have to think this one over before Thursday.
Well, you know, the last meeting that we had over there, I told them it was time to move something forward. Whether it passes or fails at this point to me is absolutely indifferent.
Well, what happens if it fails?
Then everything remains the same. And they're left with a building that they've stuck a bunch of money into
They can't use.
that they can't do anything with.
Never know.
And so, you know, like I told them, if you would have told me when this process started, when I came on board with this process, that this was going to take over a year, I'd have told you you were nuts.
I can see where it takes a year.
Well, but the thing is, exactly like they pointed out in their letter, you're taking one process and moving it from this building to another.
Right.
You know? To use your example, if someone were to buy my employer, we wouldn't skip a beat. You'd probably never even know there was a difference.
Right.
Very few minor differences.
Same
thing should happen here.
Yep.
It's unfortunate that it's not. So what you're being presented with is what I feel is the best fruits of that.
There is one other thing, and nobody say anything about it yet. You get dealing with two separate unions, I take it. Is that the county's same union as what we use?
Yeah, I think so, although we don't know if it would be a union position.
Okay. There
There's
should
some
be a grievance
questions.
situation somewhere in there, which would negate the whole process to begin with.
So,
Okay.
that's what we have. That's your update. Did you guys want to add anything?
No, I mean, is it too late if it isn't going to go? Or, I mean, is there a possibility that it isn't going to go if this is the sticking point?
Well, if the council doesn't pass it on Thursday, if this council doesn't pass it on Thursday, if they choose to table it for whatever reason, or if they vote it down, you know, we can reopen negotiations. My observation from what I've seen is that the situation for the current dispatchers is not going to improve. I mean, we can fight like the Dickens, and I have, and we can bring the whole council there. We can have a combined meeting like we have in the past. I could be wrong.
Well, what's the requirement that it even goes? If
There
that's,
isn't.
if
No,
that's
there
the
isn't.
sticking point,
There-
then why does it have to go?
There absolutely is no requirement that it goes. I think there are strong service benefits and public safety benefits for it to go. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having the discussion.
Well, from a holding point, pen standpoint, okay, we've seen all the Chief Mulder came through and showed us what our problems were and what we needed to address. That would address a lot of them, okay? But if they can't treat the employees the way they should be treated, why even pursue it? That's my point.
From the holding, if I might add, from the holding facility standpoint, this will house 6, that will house 4, is my understanding.
Yes, but the thing of it was, they were afraid that, Chief Moore was afraid there was too much interaction in front of your detainees because of space conflict.
Anything else? Your update. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn 7:18.